Hey, how's everybody doing today? Welcome. This is Point of Attack. I am Dave Novak, and I had an idea. I woke up today and had an idea for a really good video, and then my phone goes off with an ESPN notification, and I open it and I see that Don Shula passed away today. So obviously that changed my entire plans of what I was going to talk about, because after seeing that I was like, okay, we have to do a video about Don Shula and what he meant to the game, because you cannot tell the story and the history of football without bringing up Don Shula, because he was just an exceptional coach and an even better person, and he's going to be greatly missed. It was reported that he passed away today at 90 years old, and he passed away peacefully at home with his family around him. And we should all hope to be that lucky. And you hate to see anybody pass away at any age, but at 90 years old, you hope that he lived, a happy life. And obviously I don't know him personally, but it would appear, from the outside eye that, he had a good, happy life. So that's all you can hope for. And, our prayers go out to his family, who I'm sure is grieving big time today. So I just wanted to do a video about, who Don Shula was, and, what he meant to the game and where he came from. And Don Shula had been around football from the time, he was a kid. He played as a young kid, and he also played in high school, and he was good enough in high school to go on and play in college as well. And he played for John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio. And he was a running back there, and he was a pretty good running back. He was good enough that the NFL decided, they wanted him to play for them too. And the NFL draft back then was a little longer than it is now. It was a lot more rounds. But he was drafted by Paul Brown and the Cleveland Browns to come play for them in the 9th round. And he got there, and Paul Brown immediately changed him to a defensive back. And he was still able to make the transition, because he was such a good athlete, to play defensive back, in the NFL. And in the time that he played there, he was on 3 different teams. He played for the Cleveland Browns, obviously, but he also played for the Redskins and the Colts. And he had 21 interceptions in 73 games. So that's pretty good numbers. Anybody will tell you that's pretty good. So he only played for 7 years, and then he decided to become a coach, because he realized that he had a knack for it, and he was very, very smart. And Paul Brown saw that too, and he encouraged him to go be a coach. So at 30 years old, he became the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, and he was pretty good there. And he implemented a 3-4 defense, and at the time, that was a lot different than what everybody else was running. Everybody else was running, a base 4-3 or a 52, and he was a forward thinker. So he decided to, bring in a relatively new scheme and run it, and he was very successful with it. And it didn't take long for, other organizations to realize what a talent this guy was. So at 33 years old, he got his opportunity to be a head coach for the Baltimore Colts, because that's who was playing in Baltimore at the time. They were called the Baltimore Colts, not the Ravens. So he got the head coaching job there, and he was very successful as the coach for them. And I think the thing that was very tough for him, being the competitor he was and as smart as he was, was he couldn't win the big game earlier in his career. And that kind of haunted him. He had been to a couple of championships and he wasn't able to win them. And in the 7 years that he was there, he won Coach of the Year 3 times, which is absolutely exceptional, because in that day and age, one to even become a coach at 33 years old was pretty unheard of. You know, it was an older man's game at that point. They wanted to see how much experience you had, and you know, make you pay your dues and earn it. So for him to get a head coaching job at that age just shows you, you know, what high regard he was held in and what they thought about him. And he was having a hard time winning the big game, and it was unfortunate that he was on, you know, the wrong side of one of the biggest upsets in Super Bowl history, because in 1968 he took the Baltimore Colts with Johnny Unitas to the Super Bowl, and they ran into an upstart Jets team and a little quarterback by the name of Joe Namath, who during an interview was quoted where the reporter asked him, you know, do you think you have a chance being, you know, heavy underdogs the way you are? And he replied, not only do we have a chance, but we're going to win the game, I guarantee it. And that is now, you know, one of the most famous quotes going. And, you know, to hear that today, it doesn't mean a lot to us, because guys are constantly guaranteeing victory. It's nothing, so you take it with a grain of salt. But back then, that was a big deal. Guys just didn't do that. You know, you didn't just come out and guarantee victory. So, you know, that was pretty unheard of for Joe Namath to do something like that. And he said it, and then they followed through with it, and they, you know, they did beat the Colts, you know, 17-6. So that was unfortunate for Don Shula, that, you know, he had gone to a couple of championships and he wasn't able to get over that hump. It wasn't until he took the coaching job in Miami, which he is most famous for because he spent 25 years there, and he finally got over that hump in Miami, and he actually won back-to-back Super Bowls in Miami in 1972 and also in 1973. But it was the 72 season that really cemented his legacy in history, because what the 72 Dolphins did is still unparalleled, and it never happened before they did it, and it hasn't happened since they did it, and they went undefeated. And they will forever be known for that, because no other team has done it, and very few teams have even come close. The New England Patriots obviously came extremely close, where they went undefeated for the regular season, but they couldn't finish the job and win the Super Bowl. So that record still stands for Don Shula as being the only coach in history to ever go undefeated with a team. Now, granted, they did play, you know, fewer games then. You know, all in all, it was a 17-game season, including the Super Bowl. But you can't take anything away from it. You know, they played the schedule, they went undefeated, and it was absolutely amazing. And you know, then they turn around again the next year and they win it again. And all said and done, he had been to the Super Bowl 7 times, but he only had 2 wins. But that's not taking anything away from him. He still was able to win the big one numerous times, and he was able to get his team there numerous times. And his coaching development with, you know, these players is absolutely outstanding, because through his time of coaching and his 33-year coaching tenure, you know, this guy was able to turn over a dozen players into Hall of Famers. And, you know, you're talking about household names with some of these guys. So, you know, it's like Raymond Barry and Johnny Unitas and John Mackey and Larry Zonka and Dan Marino, and, you know, the list goes on and on. He was a phenomenal coach. And, you know, his time in Miami was very, very good. You know, and in 33 years, this man only had 2 losing seasons, which is unheard of. Like, you don't see that anymore. You know, the closest thing to it is what Bill Belichick, you know, had been doing in New England and still is doing. But even Bill Belichick has had more than 2 losing seasons, you know, because you do have to count when he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. So, to hear a statistic like that in 33 years to only have 2 losing seasons, that means, in a 16-game season, he had to have at least 8 wins every year but 2 of them. And the 2 years that he didn't, he had 7 wins and 6 wins. So he was right on that cusp anyway. It's not like this guy ever had, terrible, terrible years. So that just says, a ton about who he was and how successful he was. And then not only that, to speak about who he was as a man, you hear a lot of stories from ex-players about how he was such a father figure to them. And winning was important, but it was also very important for him to take these young men that, were coming to him out of the draft, these kids in their early 20s, and helping mold them into men and good men, and how he cared about them. And that says so much about his character, because that's something that you don't see a lot of today. The coaches put winning in front of everything, and that takes precedent, and they care less what these players are doing off the field, and whether or not they are good men on top of being good players. So Don Shula was a rare breed of coach, and he's going to be sorely missed, because just guys of that character just aren't around anymore. And it's a shame, and I'm sure this upcoming season there's going to be, a lot of people trying to honor his memory. I'm sure, especially the Dolphins, I'm sure there'll be patches made that they'll wear on their uniforms and things like that. But it's with a heavy heart today that, I'm doing this video, and the NFL has lost an absolute legend. And it's a shame that, it happened. And, of course, things like this are going to happen. Time marches on. People get older. But it doesn't hurt any less when it does. And granted, I didn't know the man personally. But being the football fan I am, I do get upset about it too. Because, a lot of what I grew up watching, had to do with him. And the innovations that he was. And he helped the NFL get to the forefront and be who they are today, which is, obviously the most popular sport in the United States. So, he will be missed, and our prayers go out to his family and friends. And it's a sad day, but what the legacy he left behind is exceptional, and we will still remember him with fond memories. And may he forever rest in peace. So thanks for watching.